Chapter 166 Shizun's Esteemed Madame Rong. The inscription on the stone beside Jincheng Lake read, "The path forward is difficult," in stark scarlet script. As before, Nangong Liu and Xu Shuangling were the only living people on the scene. Now, however, the ground was littered with the bodies of countless dead. More specifically, countless dead merfolk. "Hurry and seal the path. We don't want other cultivators coming up the mountain. They'll have questions." "It's almost done." Xu Shuangling pushed a black chess piece between the lips of a limp merman and mouthed the words of a spell. The merman rose unsteadily from the ground, bowed respectfully, then leapt back into the ice-studded Jincheng Lake with a splash. "I'm not yet proficient with this forbidden technique," said Xu Shuangling. "Once I get the hang of it, I won't have to feed them the chess pieces individually. I'll be able to point at them from afar, and they'll do whatever I say." "It's that powerful?" "Why would it be forbidden otherwise? In fact, even that kind of control is only scratching the surface. I've seen someone..." Xu Shuangling paused and chuckled. I've read about someone who could control people while preserving their awareness, making them obey his orders on their own volition. Now that's true power. As it stands, I can control their bodies, but not their minds. I've got a long way to go." Nangong Liu nodded. "You shouldn't practice too much with it anyway. Better not to attract attention." "As you say, sect leader." "Thank heavens you thought of this technique, though. If I'm to lift the curse, I'll need to open the gate to the infinite hells, and to do that, I require all 5 elemental spiritual essences: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Finding the spiritual essences is the hard part. We can't just show up at every sect and examine people one by one. But with Jincheng Lake under our control, every cultivator who comes here looking for weapons will reveal their spiritual cores to you. We can sit back and wait for them to come to us." Nangong Liu retrieved a tangerine from the saddlebag of his horse next to him. He peeled it and began to eat, heaving a sigh of admiration. "Shuangling, all those mythical beings in Jincheng Lake didn't stand a chance against you. You're brilliant." "Jincheng Lake is a relic of the past," Xu Shuangling replied with a small smile. "After millions of years, the power of Gojin the Exalted had dissipated to almost nothing. That's the only reason someone like me can manage all this. Sect leader's praise is undeserved." Nangong Liu laughed out loud. "Go on, tell me. What do you want as a reward?" "There isn't really anything I want." "Nah, that won't do. You have to name something." "Then how about sect leader gives me half a tangerine?" Laughing again, Nangong Liu blinked. "That's it?" But he peeled another tangerine and held it out to Xu Shuangling. "Have the whole thing." "Just half is enough." Xu Shuangling smiled blandly. "I don't want much." "You know, you're a pretty strange guy. But sure, if you say so. Here's half." Nangong Liu offered him a portion of the tangerine. Xu Shuangling's fingers were inconveniently stained with blood, so he took the tangerine from Nangong Liu's fingertips with his teeth and chewed. "Sweet and juicy. Delicious." He grinned. In that moment, Xu Shuangling's smile beneath the sunlight held a sinister shadow. The juice of the tangerine trickled from his lips, pooling at the corners of his mouth. He licked it away, his tongue flicking out like a viper mid-hiss. Nangong Liu jerked his hand back on instinct, as though spooked. But the expression on his face was one of puzzled annoyance, as if he himself had no idea what had scared him. "Look at that," Xu Shuangling said abruptly. "What?" Nangong Liu tore his gaze away from Xu Shuangling's face to look. His eyes flew wide. A complicated expression surfaced on his pudgy features. "It's that creature!" "The Merlian piranha." Xu Shuangling hauled the dead thing over, tossing the corpse upon the rocky shore to examine it carefully. The monster had the body of a fish and the head of a lion. its bloody fangs barred in a pained grimace, and its lifeless, dull black eyes bulging in distress. Xu Ling dipped his fingers into the blood on the piranha's body. He gave it a whiff, and his bare toes curled subconsciously as he frowned. Ugh, that's vile. He straightened and kicked the piranha away. This should be a quite uncommon creature in Jincheng Lake. It's said that Gojin left behind only auspicious creatures, like dragons, to guard the weapons in the lake. But the passage of time has wrought many changes upon them. Even devils can ascend and gods can fall, to say nothing of this humble creature. Nangong Liu muttered. Back then, this was the one that made me offer up Rongyan's heart. At this, the crowd outside the illusion stood stunned. Other than Chuaning, who already knew the truth, all were shaken by this revelation. What? Rongyan. But that's... While some sputtered, others had already craned their necks to look at Nangong Si in surprise and pity. That's his. After Nangong Si's initial astonishment, he began trembling from head to toe. Staggering backward, he crumpled to his knees. His face was ashen, his expression ghastly to behold. Mom? No way. No way! Si. Yebangshi tearfully murmured. No way! Nangong Si's eyes were wild. His handsome face twisted with fear and wrath, sorrow and shock, his features warping almost beyond recognition. He couldn't understand what anyone was saying. He couldn't hear anything at all. That's impossible. My mom died fighting evil spirits. Father told me she was fighting evil spirits when they pierced her heart and killed her. He shuddered all over and mumbled. Her heart was destroyed. They stabbed her in the heart and she died. He didn't cry, but his eyes were round as saucers, bulging from their sockets. He hoarsely repeated those words over and over, first mumbling and muttering, and spitting and shouting, before breaking into feral howls. They stabbed her! They stabbed her in the heart! A memory flashed before his eyes. Nangong Si had been very young when his mother and father had set out with a group of roofing cultivators to seek weapons from Jincheng Lake. His memory of the evening before they left was distinct. He'd played with Nao Baijin in the forest behind the mountain until it was late. It was long after nightfall when he crept back to his room to pretend he'd been studying the whole time. Little did he know that his mother had stopped by after dinner to give him a cloth quiver she had embroidered. Discovering the young master's residence empty, she realized Nangong Si had snuck out to play. Rongyan had naturally cold disposition. She never doted on Nangong Si like other mothers. When she returned to his quarters that night, Nangong Si was holding up a volume of carefree wandering, making a great show of reading it aloud. Rongyan stopped him and asked, What did you do after dinner? Unaware that Rongyan already knew he'd been slacking, Nangong Si set down the scroll, scratched his head, and said brightly, Mother, I've been memorizing this book. All this time? The young Nangong Si was afraid of being punished. He stalled for a moment before nodding. Uh-huh. Rongyan straightened her slender neck and set her jaw. When she looked at Nangong Si, her gaze was sharp and cold. You're lying. Nangong Si jumped. I'm not, he replied, blushing furiously. Rongyan didn't waste words on the child. She rolled up the bamboo scroll and asked, What comes before? If the whole world blamed him, he despaired not. If the whole world praised him, he rejoiced not. Rongyan's elegant brows lowered in a scowl. She slid the scroll onto the table with a crack. Nangong Si, what have I always taught you? She said sternly. It's one thing to run around outside after dark, but now you've learned to tell lies. Mom,
Silence!
In the face of her anger, Nangong Si panicked. Although his father was easygoing and affable, between his parents he'd always had more respect for his haughty and severe mother.
Your behavior is unacceptable.
The rims of Nangong Si's eyes reddened against his will. Terrified of an even harsher scolding, he retorted, still clinging to hope. I didn't get back that late. I was just playing outside for a little after dinner. Rongyan glared at him. She hadn't been all that angry to begin with, but watching her son rack his brain for excuses deepened her irritation into fury and disappointment. As soon as I got dark, I came. A sharp slap across the face cut Nangong Si off mid-sentence. Chest heaving, Rongyan's hand hung in the air as she cried furiously.
Nangong Si, as a gentleman of Rufeng's sect, I mustn't indulge in greed, resentment, deception, slaughter, obscenity, plunder, or conquest. Have you forgotten this entirely? Are you going to stand here and lie to your mother?
Dazed from the slap, Nangong Si took a long moment to come back to his senses. His eyes pricked with tears of indignation as he wailed. Why would I lie if you weren't so mean? You're always hitting me and yelling at me. You're horrible. I don't like you. I only like Daddy. He jumped to his feet, ready to run off to find Nangong Liu.
Don't even think about it.
Rongyan yanked him back with an ugly expression. She tapped Nangong Si on the nose with a nail painted scarlet with cardamom, anger surging in her eyes.
What's your dad going to do? He nods yes to everything all day long. Worthless bootlicker that he is. Do you really want to be like him? Sit down.
I won't. Rongyan gritted her teeth and dragged the struggling child back onto his chair. But as soon as she let go, Nangong Si tried to make another escape. At last, Rongyan had no choice but to raise her hand and bring down a restraining barrier with a crash. The barrier held the child firmly in place. Nangong Si fell to his knees, humiliated and furious, panting like a caged beast. Let me go! I don't want a mother like you! You never say a kind word to me. You don't care about me. You just yell at me. All you ever do is yell at me. Rongyan's face turned red and then white. After a long pause, she said through trembling lips, Stay in your room and behave. Memorize carefree wandering from beginning to end. I will test you tomorrow. Keep making trouble and I'll... She found herself at a loss. What would she do? She really didn't know. She'd always been a spirited and iron-willed woman. She thought nothing of reprimanding her craven husband in public to put him in his place. But when it came to Nangong Si, what would she do? She stood for a while, bitter and resentful, sorrowful and exasperated. As rage curdled her heart, she began to cough violently. It was an old illness that had plagued her for many years. After a spate of coughing, she hacked up a mouthful of dark blood. Feigning nonchalance, she wiped her mouth clean with a handkerchief before Nangong Si noticed. Sire, you are young, she said, her voice hoarse and somber. You haven't learned to see what's good or bad, what's right or wrong, with your own eyes. Sometimes those who indulge you don't have your best interests at heart, and those who are strict with you may not wish you ill. Your father is weak and incompetent. She paused. I don't want you to become a cultivator or a sect leader like him. She finished. Nangong Si bit his lip in silence. Yes, you're a troublemaker, and you don't apply yourself to your studies. These are small things. But where did you learn to lie? Our Rufeng sect is built upon centuries of storied tradition. Only by maintaining the values of gentlemen can we stand at the forefront of the cultivation world. Your father has never earnestly taught you these principles, but as your mother, I will remind you of them every time. Even if you don't listen, even if you think I'm harsh, even if you hate me for it. If Daddy doesn't teach me,
That's because he sees me as seer. He's happy when I'm happy, unlike you."
Nangong Si snapped.
"What kind of mother are you? You only see me as Rufeng Sect's young master and the future sect leader. I never have any fun with you. I'm not gonna listen to you."
Rongyan was furious. Her cheeks, usually white as snow, were unnaturally flushed. She covered her mouth with the handkerchief as she was overcome by another coughing fit. This time, it took her longer to catch her breath. At last, she said sternly,
"Fine. If you won't listen, I'll tell you every single day until you understand."
Nangong Si, surpassingly stubborn even as a child, had clapped his hands over his ears. Rongyan sat down and gradually smoothed her emotions, but her chest still twinged with pain. This old heart injury was one she had sustained while exorcising demons. She took medicine for it every day, but it only worsened with time. When she looked up and saw her son's rebellious expression in the candlelight, she had to again close her eyes. Finally, she said in a more measured tone,
"Seer, I won't be by your side forever. There will come a day when I can't watch over you. I only hope that in the future you'll understand."
She trailed off. Within her barrier, Nangong Si was curled into a tiny ball, crying. Her child, her carefree and bright seer, had begun to sob under the force of her scolding. For a long while, Rongyan could only stare. Slowly, she rose and walked over to the barrier. She reached out, wanting to undo the spell, to lean down and take this child in her arms, to touch his reddened face, to press a kiss to his forehead. But she restrained herself, her figure stiff and unrelenting. With effort, she finished the sentence she had started.
"You need to understand. As a gentleman of Rufeng Sect, I mustn't indulge in greed, resentment, deception, slaughter, obscenity, plunder, or conquest."
"I don't get it. I don't want to. I... Lifting tearful eyes, Nangong Si railed at his mother, who stood outside the barrier.
"I hate you. I don't want a mom like you."
Rongyan was silent. In that moment, her face, visible through the barrier, was pale and resolute as ever, yet seemed to contain a measure of grief and heartbreak. For 20 years, Nangong Si had seen that face in his dream. Each time, his pillow was wet when he awoke. His younger self was like a scorpion brandishing its pincers, injecting venom straight into his mother's heart. It hurt. It hurt so much. It was a pain that would persist for a lifetime. He would never forgive himself. 3 days later, Rongyan still hadn't come to the residence to see Nangong Si. Instead, she asked her maid to deliver the quiver embroidered with camellia flowers, along with the letter. Even her writing was formal and solemn, unadorned with niceties. She said that she knew Seer had recently been learning martial arts and taken a liking to archery, so she embroidered a quiver for his use. She would be traveling to Jincheng Lake with his father. Upon her return, she still intended to review Carefree Wandering with him, and she hoped he wouldn't continue to stubbornly shirk his studies. And what had Nangong Si done? Angry and resentful, he had taken a knife and cut his mother's quiver into countless scraps. He had tossed his mother's letter into the fire and burned it to ash. He had ripped up the copy of Carefree Wandering on his table. As a young child, he had delighted in these daring acts of destruction. He lashed out at her. He hated her. He wanted her to know that he'd never ever listen to such a terrible mother. He would never bend to her will. He'd bared his venomous fangs and erected his walls. He waited for his mother to humble herself before him, to admit her mistakes. Or, perhaps back then, he'd summoned this pathetic burst of malevolence as a tool to trade for a single gentle word, a single warm embrace from his mother. So he waited, but he never received any of those things. An admission of wrongdoing or a hug, some show of remorse or gentleness. He would have accepted anything. He had stood his ground, quite self-satisfied, waiting to fight another round with that woman, only to receive, instead, her cold corpse. Wu Fengsect's leader was ambushed in the forest late at night. His wife shielded him from the attack. She was stabbed in the heart and passed away. When the coffin arrived, Nangong Si stood dazed at the foot of Wu Fengsect's towering city gate. The ground was littered in white silk and paper money. As the heir to the sect, his place was at the front of the procession. According to funeral customs, after an elder shattered an earthenware pot, the madam's coffin would be carried over a fire pit and re-enter the sect. Her son was to kneel and cry, knocking his head against the ground to welcome back his mother's soul. But Nangong Si couldn't cry. He felt the whole thing was absurd, empty and unreal. The brilliant sunlight dazzled his eyes as it glanced off the ground. He felt dizzy and nauseated. It wasn't real. It wasn't real. If it were real, what should he do? How could he possibly accept it? Before death had separated them, the last reminder his mother had given him was this: as a gentleman of Wu Feng's sect, I mustn't indulge in greed, resentment, deception, slaughter, obscenity, plunder, or conquest. And how had he answered her? He didn't want to remember, but his hateful cries from that day had been carved into his bones. His mother's face outside the barrier had been so pained, so sorrowful. It hurt. It really hurt too much. The last words he had said to his mother in this lifetime were, "I hate you. I don't want a mom like you." The coffin was hoisted over the fire. The elder smashed the earthenware pot. Thousands knelt and wept, and his father choked with sobs at the sight of the casket. But Nangong Si stood alone, clutching that camellia quiver he had cut to pieces. Its embroidered petals were a vivid red, the stamens canary yellow. The flowers it depicted were dusted with snow, yet flourished nonetheless, as though his mother's warm fingertips had but touched the coarse fabric and awoken these brilliant blooms. Perhaps she'd had some premonition before her death, or perhaps it was only happenstance. Her embroidery was so detailed, the flowers so lifelike, that it seemed she had taken all the love she hadn't spoken aloud, all her future lessons and advice, and stitched them, thread by thread, onto that little cloth quiver. Nangong Si clutched the quiver tightly. It was the very last thing his mother had left him.